So this is the network topology for hub and spoke that we are going to configure on Fortigate Firewall. As you can see on my screen, we have Fortigate hub, and behind the Fortigate hub, we have the subnet 33.33.33.33/32, and we have the external port 1, 192.168.0.108. On spoke 1, we have port 1 configured with an IP of 192.168.0.6, and the inside network is 11.11.11/32. On spoke 2, we have port 1 configured with an IP of 192.168.0.7, and inside network is 22.22.22.22/32. So in this particular scenario, we will have 2 spoke and 1 hub, and all the inside network should be able to communicate with each other on the remote end as well. So this is pretty much about the network topology. So on the hub, if you go inside the interfaces, you will see a loopback interface configured with 33.33.33.33 and port 1, which is the WAN port 192.168.0.108/24. Similarly, on spoke 1, let me show you. This is the spoke 1. If you check inside the interface, you will see loopback configured with an IP of 11.11.11.11 as per our scenario, and 192.168.0.6 on port 1. And spoke 2, similarly, we have loopback configured with an IP of 22.22.22.22/32 and port 1, 192.168.0.7/24. So we are good with the IP configurations on the hub and spokes. Let's try to configure the VPN. So first, we will configure the VPN towards spoke 1. Let's try to configure that on hub. In this video, I'm going to configure a custom VPN, but in the coming video, I'll show you how you can use the IPsec wizard to configure hub and spoke. Click on Create IPsec tunnel, name it as spoke 1. And then I'm going to click Custom, click Next, spoke 1, remote IP address. I'm going to put it as 192.168.0.6. And then the interface is going to be port 1. In our case, this is the exit interface. Net traversal is not required, but we will keep it enabled. Rest of the thing will keep it as the default values. Appreciate key will put it as password. Version 1, main mode. We will put it as des SHA-1 group 2. I'll let it be the default one. Lifetime index 6400. Local ID, let it be the default IP address of the peer on port 1. And in phase 2, we have phase 2 selector. So we'll have to configure the inside network. Local is going to be 33.33.33.33. Remote is going to be 11.11.11.11. Let's try to configure that. It is going to be an IP address. So local is and remote subnet is going to be And in the advanced settings, let's try to keep it as this SHA-1. And let's keep it as default. Let's try to save this thing. So now we are spoke 1. Now let's try to configure spoke 2, which is the VPN towards spoke 2 as on my screen. Let's try to configure that. Let's name it as spoke, sorry, let's name it as spoke 2. Click custom, click next. Static IP address, remote IP. Let's put it as per our configuration. Interface is going to be port 1 as per the diagram. Let's keep everything as default, pre-shared key password. Version 1, we will keep it as des SHA-1. And as for the diagram, local is going to be 33, 33, 33, 33. On hub, we are configuring the VPN on hub. We will change it to IP address. Local is remote is going to be an IP address, which is 22, 22, 22, 22. Let's configure that. Click on advanced. Again, we are going to use this SHA-1. Let's keep everything as default. So now we have spoke 1, spoke 2. Similarly, we'll have to configure the same on spoke 1 and spoke 2. Now let's move on to our spoke 2. Before that, we can configure the policies to allow the traffic inside and outside. So click on policy object, firewall policy, create policy, name it as VPN out. It is going to be loopback. Outgoing interface is going to be the spoke. Source is going to be all for now. Destination is going to be all for now. Let's try to keep it as all ICMP. That is not required. So this is for the spoke 1. Let's try to create for spoke 2. Source for demonstration, I'll keep it as all. Destination as all. Service as all ICMP. That is not required. Save this. This is for the outgoing traffic through the interface, which is the tunnel interface. Now let's try to create the policy for the incoming traffic via VPN. Incoming interface is going to be spoke 1. Outgoing interface is going to be loopback. Source, let's keep it as all for demonstration purpose. But in your case, you will have to use the specific IP that you would like to allow. No natting required. So this is for spoke 1. Similarly, we'll create the policy for spoke 2 as well. Incoming interface is going to be spoke 2, loopback, source all for demonstration, service as all ICMP, no natting required. So now we are all good on hub. In the network part, we will have to create the static route, which will then divert the traffic towards the remote IPs through the tunnel. Interface is going to be spoke 1. So for the network 22, the traffic will be diverted to spoke 1 as per our diagram. Let's try to do that for spoke 2 as well. Okay, this is for the spoke 2. By mistake, we have given it as spoke 1. Let's try to create for spoke 2 IP. This is the network behind spoke 1. So now we have the two routes available here, which will direct the traffic to spoke 1 and spoke 2 respectively as per our diagram. So now moving on to our spoke 1. So now we will configure the VPN first. Let's click on VPN IPsec tunnels, create tunnel, we'll name it as spoke 1. Click on custom, click next. Static IP address, remote is going to be 192.168.0.108, which is the hub. Interface is going to be port 1. We'll keep rest of the thing in default mode. Appreciate key is password as what we have configured on hub as well. We will keep it as des SHA1. We will keep the values as default for lifetime local ID. And here in spoke 1, local is going to be 11, 11, 11, 11. Remote is going to be 33, 33, 33, 33. Click on advanced setting. Select this SHA1. Keep it as default. So again, going to verify the same on hub as well. So local is 33, remote is 11. This is for spoke 1. So that's on spoke 1. Let's try to configure the policy for the incoming and outgoing traffic via VPN. This is for the incoming traffic. Incoming interface is going to be spoke 1. Outgoing is loopback. Source for demonstration, we'll keep it as all. NAT is not required. Click OK. So now we'll create the traffic for the policy for the outgoing. Local interface is going to be loopback. Outgoing interface is going to be spoke 1. So now we have bidirectional policy configured. And the last thing is the static route. Create a static route for the remote subnet, which is 33, 33, 33, 33 on spoke 1. Interface is going to be spoke 1. So now we have everything in place on hub and spoke 1. Let's try to configure spoke 2. The interfaces are already configured. Let's try to create the VPN first. This is the spoke 2. Name it as spoke 2. Custom. Click on next. Remote IP is going to be the IP address configured on hub port 1, which is 108. Interface is again going to be port 1. Let's keep everything as default. Pre-shared key is password that we have configured on hub. We'll keep it as test SHA-1. Like I said, on this spoke 2 configuration on hub, if you see local is 33, 33, 33, 33, remote is 22, 22, 22, 22. On spoke 2, it is going to be in a reverse manner. Click on advanced. Configure the same proposal, des SHA-1. Leave all the settings to default. And coming down to our policy, we will have to create the bidirectional policy for the incoming and outgoing traffic via VPN. First, we'll create the incoming policy. This is going to be spoke 2, loopback, source all, destination all, service ICMP, no natting required. If you want, you can reverse the existing policy as well. This is going to be the outgoing policy. Outgoing is from loopback to spoke 2. No need of NAT. Click OK. So the last thing is to configure the static route for the remote subnet, which is 33, 33, 33, 33 on spoke 2. So now the configuration is complete. We'll now test the connectivity. So in the configuration part on spoke 1, I think we did not enable the ping here. Let's try to enable the ping on loopback. Now we are good to test on hub. Let's try to initiate some traffic. We'll keep the source as 33, 33, 33, 33. Let's try to ping 11, which is behind spoke 1. As you can see, I'm able to ping. Now let's try to ping the spoke 2 subnet, which is 22, 22, 22, 22 from hub. I'm able to ping. Now let's try to check the status of the VPN. So if you check the status of VPN, you can see spoke 1 active, spoke 2 active. On spoke 1, VPN tunnel if we see active. Policy is showing incoming increasing. On spoke 2, tunnel is active. Policy should show incoming traffic. As you can see, VPN in. And if you go to spoke 1, we can try initiating some traffic to hub. Source is going to be 11 on spoke 1. You are able to ping the subnet behind the hub. Let's try to do that from spoke 2 as well. Source is going to be 22, 22, 22, 22. Let's try to execute the ping for 33 behind the hub. And we are able to ping. So everything is working fine. We'll have to check the connectivity from spoke 1 to spoke 2 subnet as well. Before that, let us check the policy. Okay, so now on hub, we have the route for 22, 22, 22, 22, and 11, 11, 11, 11. On spoke 1, we do not have the route for 22, 22, 22, 22. So now let's try to configure that. We'll try to configure the route for 22 subnet. This is behind the spoke 2, and the interface is again going to be spoke 1. Let's try to save this. On spoke 2, we will similarly configure the same static route pointing to spoke 2. Now we have the routes for all the subnets in the VPN, and we should be able to ping each other. Let's try to initiate some ping from spoke 1 to spoke 2. This will confirm the connectivity across all the protected subnets. So in the VPN configuration, before we start doing the connectivity check from spoke 1 to spoke 2, we'll have to do some changes to the VPN configuration. Because previously what we had was this local 33, 33, 33, 33, remote 11, 11, 11, 11. So if we try to ping 11 to 22, we might have restrictions because of the proxy configured. Let's try to add one more. Phase 2. So local is going to be again 33. Local is again going to be 22 in this case, because from spoke 1, we'll try to reach out to 22. We already have the proxy ID local 33, 33, 33, 33, remote 11, 11, 11, 11. Now we'll have to add one more phase 2 that will allow the traffic from 11, 11, 11, 11 towards 22, 22, 22, 22 on hub. So be careful with this configuration because it is little confusing. But on the hub, local is going to be 22, 22, 22, 22 because for spoke 1, the traffic will be through this particular VPN, and this VPN will think that this subnet is behind the hub. So local is going to be 22. Remote is again going to be 11. Which is very important here to understand how to configure this SHA-1. Again, explaining the same thing. While configuring the second one, we'll have to configure on hub, we'll have to configure local as 22, 22, 22, 22, and remote as 11, 11, 11, 11. Or there is an alternative where you can create a single face and have the proxy ID defined as 0000000. That will allow all the traffic. But I do not want that. I want to have a separate proxy IDs configured. So I'm creating 1A for the connectivity from this to this. So now if you check on spoke 1, we have 2. One is 33, 33, 33, 33, remote 11, 11, 11. Another one is 22, 22, 22, 22, 11, 11, 11, 11. Similarly, we'll have to do that on spoke 1 as well. Let's try to do that. Click on add. IP address is going to be local 11, 11. Remote subnet is again going to be 22.22.22.22. Advanced settings. Click OK. So now we have the configuration in place, and we have the policy which allows all the traffic from all the source and destination. We do not have any restrictions on the policy which allows all source, all destination, and ICMP. So we are good on spoke 1. Similarly, for spoke 2, for this particular spoke 2 to communicate to spoke 1, spoke 2 will have local as 22, 22, 22, 22. Remote will be 11, 11, 11, 11 here on spoke 2. Similarly, on FortiGate hub, for this communication, remote would be 22, 22, 22, 22. Local would be 11, 11, 11, 11 on hub. So we'll have to configure that as well. So this is spoke 2. I'm adding one more phase 2. This is the separate proxy ID for each communication. If you do not want to complicate things, what you can do is you can select the subnet and keep it as 00000000, which will allow the traffic for all the source and all the destination through VPN. I do not want to do that, so I'm going to keep it as separate. Local is going to be on hub. It is going to be 11. Remote is again going to be the same. Similarly, we'll have to configure the same on spoke 2 as well. Click on add. IP address, IP address. Local is going to be 22. Remote is going to be 11. Click on advanced, match the configuration, the proposal. PFS enable, second lifetime default value. Click OK. So now we should see everything working fine. So now if you try to initiate some ping from spoke 1 to spoke 2 via hub, you will see the ping failing. And the reason is because you would need another policy. Be careful here. I'm going to show you why you need another policy. So if you see carefully, the traffic is getting denied by the policy. You can see here, source is 11, 11, 11, 11, going to 22, 22, 22, 22. Everything is fine. It shows spoke in, out, loopback. If you come here, it shows after the route lookup, which is 22, 22, 22, 22. It says in is spoke 1, out is spoke 2. Be careful here. You have to pay attention here to configure the hub and spoke correctly. So whenever you want the communication from spoke 1 to spoke 2, you will have to configure another policy from spoke 1 to spoke 2. And only after the configuration of that policy, you will be able to ping from spoke 1 to spoke 2 in the inside network, I mean. So let me show you the same. Create a policy, name it as spoke 1 to spoke 2. You might have to create the reverse policy as well for spoke 2 to spoke 1 traffic. That we will reverse that in some time. So let's try to create this policy first. Incoming interface is spoke 1, outgoing interface is spoke 2. Source is all, destination is again all, and we do not need the NAT, so we'll keep it as default. Let's try to save this policy from spoke 1 to spoke 2. Service, let's try to keep it as all ICMP. Click OK. So now you would need another policy in reverse manner as well. So now we have the reverse policy as well from spoke 2 to spoke 1. Set status as enabled. Now coming on spoke 1, if we try to initiate some ping, you should be able to ping 222 from spoke 1 as well. And going to spoke 2. These are some of the sniff from the spoke 1. Let's try to execute some ping for spoke 1 as well. As you can see, we are able to ping the spoke 1 as well from spoke 2. And if you go and check the policy, you should be able to see the firewall policy with the counters increasing. This is the in, and on hub, spoke 2 to spoke 1, you can see here the counter bytes increasing. Spoke 1 to spoke 2, again the counter bytes increasing. If you do that again, you should see them incrementing. So that's how you configure spoke hub and spoke VPN on Fortigate Firewall. There are a lot of things that you should remember. One is the network static routes for all the subnets. And then the next would be the firewall policy. So usually you would need the normal VPN in-out policy from the specific interface to the tunnel interface and vice versa. And in return, if you want the communication from spoke 1 to spoke 2, well, you will have to create the spoke 1 to spoke 2 policy as well. So this is additional policy that you would need in to and fro manner for the bidirectional traffic from spoke 1 to spoke 2 and spoke 2 to spoke 1. And in addition, if you would like to have a separate phase 2 for the spoke 1, you will have to create separate phase 2 entries. These are the proxy IDs. And if you do not want this complexity, well, what you can do is you can have source address as any, destination address as any, so that it allows all the traffic from the source to any destination, which will reduce the complexity but will again open up the security breach. That's all in this video. I hope you have enjoyed the video and learned how to configure hub and spoke on Fortigate Firewall. In the coming videos, I'll show you how you can configure the same using the VPN wizard, which is here. Thank you for tuning in. See you in the next one. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. See you in the next one. Bye.